Hey everybody, it's Sinead, and I'm back with an interview. I'm going to be talking to Brian Mullin today. Brian Mullin is a licensed professional engineer. He practices structural engineering. Once this whole flat earth thing came on the scene, he set out to debunk this ridiculous theory and found out that he had a lot more questions than he did answers. Brian also runs a channel called Balls Out Physics. I will link it in the description. I encourage everyone to go check it out. He has done some really great work and has proposed a really awesome experiment to prove if the Earth is curved or if the current model is correct. It's called Force the Line, and I encourage everyone to check out the video because it's a very, very cool idea. Apparently anybody who questions the shape of the Earth is a complete retard. But interesting that we have engineers, scientists, and researchers reevaluating the current globe model and finding that there are many holes. If this material is triggering to you, shut it off now. But if you want to open your mind and consider other possibilities, come along with us.
Sounds good. So I was wondering if you could tell our listeners just briefly about your educational background and what got you interested in studying physics and engineering.
Well, actually, I grew up. My dad is a mechanical engineer, and when I was growing up, I mean, it was basically hammered into my head. He had me working on cars before I could even drive them. I mean, way before I could drive them, and just showing me how everything works. And so, just growing up, I was always tinkering with stuff and building things, designing. I was even drawing sketches out for like tree houses and things like that. So it was just natural for me to go into engineering. And then I had a really good physics teacher in high school, and he really got me thinking about science and how the world works. And then so I didn't do so great in high school, but I got good enough grades to get into University of North Florida. I was accepted right away, and then went for civil engineering, and then got a job as a structural engineer and went from there.
Very cool, very cool. Now, this is kind of going off on a tangent already, but have you heard about this quantum physics, and do you know what that's all about?
Oh yeah, I studied that a lot. I mean, just quantum mechanics, quantum physics, particle physics. I kind of went into both. I was really into space for a long time, all throughout my life, and then also inner space, if you want to call it that, or microscopic space as well. So I mean, basically, in engineering, you take physics 1 and physics 2, and then if you were going to do a physics minor or go on to a master's in physics, you would go into quantum mechanics. So it's mind blowing, some of the stuff they found, and it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, that's my issue with it. I'm still trying to make sense of all of this. I'm just asking questions, but a lot of that quantum theory, it really gets kind of wild and out there. Do you have any criticisms of physics and how they are taught in this country and in our educational system?
Well, yeah, definitely with gravity, for one. It's not very well explained, I don't think. And then we're taught Newton's equation for gravity, and then Einstein kind of came along and contradicted that. Newton says it was a pulling force, and then Einstein says it's a pushing force, and it's actually bending space. But we're taught in school that it's a pulling force, like Newton said. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense the way it's taught, and it's not explained well. It's not proven. We never do any experiment to show that gravity is real besides anything just falling down. There's no horizontal attraction between objects that we try to measure. So some of it's good, but then some of it leaves you with questions, and then you just say, oh, well, I'm not smart enough to understand it. It's smarter people than me. So, and then you just, go from there and say, okay, they figured it out. I'll trust them. So.
Yeah. I mean, just some of Einstein's work is really out there. And to me, it's the epitome of mental masturbation, because it's just all of these hypothetical situations and dark matter and, black holes and all of this stuff that we can't actually see or really prove. Mm-hmm. But it's just kind of like this mathematical masturbation, in my opinion. And you're right. There hasn't been any study proving gravity. So it is a theory, yet people are taking it as fact. Same with the theory of relativity, which really to me just sounds like an excuse for things they can't explain. It's all relative, man. Relativity. The reason that, planes can, on a ball Earth, they're not, their flight trajectory isn't affected by the rotation of the Earth is because it's all relative.
Yeah, I mean, relativity becomes an excuse for why we can be moving, and or the Earth can be rotating about its axis and then hurtling through space,
Right.
and if things can move on it as if it's stationary, like it seems to us, and we can't tell the difference. It's one good excuse, and you never really think about it. There's never any problems done in school to show that it works out, and that's what I tried to do with my first episode. I made a couple of errors, but I mean, I still was trying to get people thinking about, why don't we ever do this? Why don't we ever prove it? And
Right.
I don't know why. And actually, there's a really good documentary that just came out. Actually, I was at work one day, and somebody had seen some of my videos and mailed this to me right before Christmas as a Christmas present. It's called The Principle. I mean, it still assumes a globe Earth, and that there is a universe out there. But there's the idea that the Copernican principle, which is the heliocentric, we go around the sun, is wrong, and that everything is centered around us. And they get into relativity and the experiments and how we got to where we are and how hard it is for scientists to challenge the accepted beliefs. It's really, really good. I mean, if anybody listens, I highly recommend watching it.
Very interesting. Yeah, because I mean, when I walk outside and I'm just using my common sense, it appears that I'm not moving, and it appears that everything is revolving around me. Especially, I mean, people will argue star trail pictures or video and say that proves that we are living on a ball, when really it's proving that everything is revolving around us, because Polaris stays fixed constantly. And if we were tilted at, 23.4 degrees tilt, that star would not stay fixed in one point. It would be constantly shifting. So they, when I say that to people, they say, oh, well, Polaris is going to move in 2,000 years. That still doesn't explain why it's not moving.
Yeah, well, they say that I think it takes 23,000 or half of that before the wobble goes back and forth between Vega and Polaris. Vega is apparently the other North Star, and it's the precession of the equinox, whatever. But nobody will be around anywhere near that amount of time to back this up.
Right, so, it's a convenient excuse, really. Oh, well, in 40 million years, it's going to move, and we know that because we're NASA.
Yeah,
we take trillions of your dollars.
Yes, and then the other thing that they say the star trails making perfect. I mean, they make perfect circles except for the planets. The stars make perfect circles around Polaris, and that's evidence that the Earth is rotating about its axis, right? Well, the Earth is also supposed to be orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour, and then the Sun is supposed to be orbiting the center of the galaxy at over 500,000 miles per hour. But the only motion we see in the stars in the night sky is from our rotation about our axis. That's crazy. And of course, they say, well, they're just so far away that they appear to be stationary, or that they stay in the same positions just because of how far they are away. But they would also be moving if they're suns about the center of the Milky Way or wherever they are, and it doesn't really make any sense. I never thought about it though until I started looking into flat Earth theory, concave Earth theory, all these other things, and it's like, whoa, wait a second, that's ridiculous. So
Yeah, I think that the reason that it's so hard for people to even go there with this material is because it is so simple and so in your face that I think it's an insult to everyone's intelligence that they've believed this lie for so long. Because it's like, to me, it was just a huge slap in the face. Like, wow. It's as if my mind wants to complicate this world way more than it is. It's like, I want to explain that, oh no, I am on a ball and we're doing this and that and this, and nothing makes sense, when really it all is very simple. And to me, now that I truly believe that we are not on a spinning ball, I don't know if it's concave, convex. I don't really know the details. I'm still learning and exploring. But for me, I have much more of a sense of being grounded now. I don't feel like lost in space, twirling around and, just a speck, an insignificant little pinprick, in the universe. I feel like I'm much more connected to this place now.
Yeah, definitely. That's I do as well. And what's interesting is how it does get very complex when you do believe that you live on this tiny, insignificant ball, in the middle of an infinite universe. And Yeah, I was basically an atheist. I was maybe agnostic. I didn't really think about it very much, and because I thought I was so small, I believed the Big Bang and all that stuff. I mean, I was really into studying space, and when you get really into it, you mentioned dark matter, and then there's dark energy was what was always so mind blowing to me, is because dark energy kind of defies gravity, and so what they say dark energy is what's pushing all of the galaxies away from each other, because gravity says that all masses attract each other, so everything should be eventually start pulling itself back together into one big ball of stuff. And so this dark energy, based on modern belief, is that it's pushing all of these galaxies around away from each other and arranging them, and also flattening them into disks, because they should be spheres if based on gravity, and they're not. And so it's just mind-blowing when you really get into it, and you start to, when you get that far into it, you say, wow, this is almost divine. And so even before I discovered all this, I started to go back towards, wow, maybe there's something more to just what I can see and what this physical world is. So the excuses start to get ridiculous to make the model work. And then when you find out, and when you get here and you say, whoa, what if it's all a lie? And it's really, I mean, I don't even think space exists anymore, to be honest, and I know that sounds crazy.
Well, not how we're told it exists. I mean, clearly there is like a sky full of stars and planets. We'll get into planets later. I don't believe they look like we've been told they look, and you've been actually looking at them with a telescope and recording them, so you can talk about that later. But really, Brian, I think they're just making this up as they go along.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, they're like, okay, crap, they've caught us on this one, let's cover it up. Oh, well, that's because in 20,000 years it will change. Okay, believe us. Just go back to sleep now.
Yeah. That's when the question hit, or when I asked myself that question, what if it's all a big lie? Everything just, like, it was just dominoes. Everything started making sense. I started seeing everything as excuses, instead of what I was believing were kind of theories for things, and maybe they weren't right or whatever before. But now it's just like, oh, it's just, they're all excuses.
Yes.
So
Now,
one of the things, I mean, backing up to talking about just how everything rotates, is if you just watch the sun.
you were talking about watching the sun?
Yeah. If you just watch the sun and the moon. I mean, looking at the sun is also, obviously, it'll blind you, but I mean, I use a welding mask to watch it, and my neighbors probably think I'm nuts, but, I'm out there standing in the yard, and, I mean, you can see it, when you look at the sun through a welding mask, it's awesome, because you can see that it is the same diameter as the moon.
Yes, exactly.
And if you just pay attention to both of them, they both move through the same path every day. I mean, when you can see the moon, or when you do catch the moon, it's just the moon is moving slower. I mean, the sun obviously moves through the sky in 24 hours, or becomes visible through however many hours there's going to be daylight for us that day. But they both move through the same path, and yet one is supposed to be going around us, and we're supposed to be spinning, and that's what makes the other one go through the sky. And just based on our perception, I mean, there would be a noticeable difference when you really think about it. How can we not tell that one is doing one thing and the other one is doing something else? They both appear to do the same exact thing, except for the difference in speed. My high school physics teacher, he said, he was a great teacher, and he thought one of the most amazing things about human beings is that an outfielder in a baseball game can see a ball connect with a bat, and hear it, see it, and judge where it's going to go so well that he can catch it, because that's how good our perception is. And I started thinking about with all this, and like, if we can catch a baseball, I think that we could tell the difference between a massive sun, that's relatively stationary. There's that word again, but that's relatively stationary, and that we're moving relative to it. Like when you're in a car and you know that there's trees on the side of the road, and they appear to be moving in you, but you can definitely tell they're moving, and they are stationary. It starts to get nuts. Like, wow, I can't believe I always believed this.
Yes, and I think it's really shaped how we perceive the world, obviously, but how our minds are shaped. Because it's interesting to think, okay, we have the sun that is usually considered the masculine, right? And you have the moon, which is considered the feminine. Now, in the heliocentric model, we have the sun being absolutely ginormous, like 100 times, way more times bigger than the moon, and it is stationary, it's not moving, and it is 93 million miles away, apparently, which is a really, really far distance. So I think that it's really thrown the balance between man and woman really off as well. I think that model is just basically a macrocosm representation of what's going on, on this plane right now with men and women and the male and female energies.
Oh yeah, I think that echoes into our culture. I mean, I think it's part of the whole. I mean, just how everything's come to being in our recent society. I mean, it's such a male-dominated society. It makes sense that our model, worships the male in the sky.
Right. Some would argue that it's actually gynocentric. A lot of people are under that belief right now, but I don't think that's it. I don't think it's necessarily male dominated either. I think it's like this mutation of the male energy. It's kind of like this a lot of these people in the priest classes, like the Freemasons and Bohemian Grove, a lot of them are gay. They're homosexual men, so they're basically like a perversion of the male energy. So that presence is screwing up women and men. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I could just see that.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to know, have you ever looked into the electric universe theory? And I'm sure you have. And what are your thoughts on this? Because I know a lot of people are looking into that now.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Way before I ever looked into flat Earth theory, I'd always had questions about gravity, and I was studying. I'd watched the documentary Thunderbolts of the Gods, which is really good, and I'd gotten really into that and saying, wait, I think this is an electrical force, and I listened to a lot of what Wallace Thornhill had to say, who's a plasma physicist. I think he's Australian or maybe from New Zealand. But the guy is just brilliant, and I mean the points he makes are spot on. Like, this explains a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to the craters that are on the moon. I mean they actually appear, and they've proven through experiments in laboratories that these types of craters would be made through like basically lightning strikes, and because they're perfect. I mean every crater on the moon, when you look at it through a telescope, it's a perfect concentric circle, and to think that we're told that all of these objects that hit the moon were asteroids or whatever when the solar system was being formed. There were no clips, nothing hit the moon and ricocheted off of it. They all made perfect impacts to make a perfect crater. That's just impossible when you really think about the chaos that our universe is supposed to be. It doesn't make sense. And then he also gets into the planets and into Mars and how the trenches were formed on those planets, but now I'm questioning whether those pictures we've all been looking at are real.
That's exactly it, because that's assuming the ball planet, model and images that we've been shown from NASA, which are admittedly computer composite images. Mm-hmm. So I had the same exact kind of path of questioning as well, because now I've been looking into the moon. I have no idea what the hell that thing is. I'm still trying to figure it out. There's something weird coming from it. I know it has a cool light that it emits. Things are cooler under the moon versus not under the moon. Say you had it, in the shade of a tree, and then you moved out from behind that shade and we're in the direct moonlight. It will cast a cold light upon you. Yes. And now this is the thing that really blows my mind about the moon. It appears that it may not even be something that we can land on, because there are video clips taken by, I believe it was the Royal Astronomical Society, of stars passing through the moon. Mm-hmm. And, many people have seen, even during the day, it does appear transparent at times, but I see those craters that you're talking about as well. So I'm thinking, what the heck is this thing? Is it just some kind of orb of weird energy? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. Yeah,
I've been taking a lot of video of it. I haven't actually posted any on my channel yet, but I watched it one evening. As the sun was going out of view, or whatever you want to call it, it appears transparent. I've got video of it, and as dusk, right around dusk, it almost looks like there's lights behind a screen. I mean, it sounds crazy, but when you're really looking at it up close, my neighbor actually came over and was looking at this with me, and she's like, "What the heck?" I mean, she thinks this idea is nuts. She thinks that everything we're told is real, but she likes to listen to what I say. And so she's looking at it with me. She's like, "What the heck? Those look like lights." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not the only one seeing this. It looks like it's not emitting a single light that takes up the whole sphere. That there's like what looks like mountain ranges are actually some kind of lights, and then I mean, it then definitely looks transparent, and then as it gets more and more dark, then it starts to take that solid shape and look like something we could land on. But it's very, very strange. I don't know what I'm looking at, to be honest.
Me neither, and I'm never going to claim to have it all figured out. I'm a truth seeker. I ask questions. I know you do the same, and that's what makes life invigorating. You know, we're trying to understand the world that we live in, and I'm not going to accept these answers without proof. The moon, it's a strange thing. I've heard theories that it is recently new to our world, that it's like an imposter, that it's, you know, we hear all these crazy theories, like there's Nazis on the moon, and you know, I just think it's interesting. If you watch The Truman Show, I truly believe that was trying to tell us something. And it's interesting because you have this man on the moon who looks very Jewish, who basically is controlling and manipulating the entire reality down below in the dome, you know? So I just thought that was interesting. Maybe they're trying to clue us into something. I have no idea. But the moon, I have a strange relationship with it. When it's a full moon, I always kind of I can feel its presence. I feel it staring at me through the window. Sometimes, I'll be like tossing and turning. I can't sleep. I look out of my window and that moon is just like staring at me. And I really do feel it. I don't really like it. It feels kind of hostile.
Yeah, that's. I do get kind of a strange feeling when I look at it sometimes.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention the Truman Show too. I mean, what is this thing really? But
right.
But yeah, and what's interesting is, yesterday we had this crazy snowstorm hit the Northeast, and sure enough, there's a full moon yesterday, and they're saying, "Oh, this is making the storm worse," and all these things, and there seems to be a lot associated with the moon. Like I just recently found out that Easter is on the first full moon of the year, and that's why it always moves. I didn't know that until.
Oh wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's why it moves all over the place. It's the first full moon of spring is when Easter is. It'll be that weekend. So it's interesting. There's a lot associated with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, even if you look at Islam, right, their symbol, it has the crescent moon with the star that is almost like inside of the moon.
Yeah, that's telling.
Yeah.
Suggests something, maybe.
Yes, I think so. I mean, some people will argue that, basically it was the European peoples that would worship the sun because we lived in colder climates and, the sun was the giver of life. It was the melter of snow and ice, But for these desert peoples, the moon might have been something that they revered or worshipped because it was bringing, coolness to their warm environment. I don't know. I think it goes deeper than that, honestly. But I wanted to ask you, back to kind of talking about gravity, what is your theory on, how I guess, how would I put this without using the term gravity? How we are planted on this earth firmly right now, but, things can fly. Is it buoyancy? Is it magnetism? What do you think's going on?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, things obviously fall down, and
right.
It's been pretty well proven. I mean, this was hammered in my head in physics that everything accelerates towards Earth at the same rate. It doesn't matter in a vacuum. That is, two objects dropped in a vacuum, like a feather and a bowling ball, for example. In the BBC had a thing with Brian Cox, even though I don't really like that guy, but he showed that in the vacuum that the two objects fall at the same rate because there's no air. So that would suggest that it's just like water. The air is just like water, and that something that's less dense will fall slower than something that's more dense, and because it's basically like it's floating, and that's how hot air balloons are able to float. I mean, it's like a gas is actually considered a liquid, so it's almost like we are in a liquid. We are submerged in a liquid. It just doesn't seem like that, and so. But what is actually causing things to accelerate down? That's the question. I mean, what is it? Some people think it's the ether, as Tesla suggested, and based on some of his quotes, it seemed like he believed that. And of course, I didn't even know who Nikola Tesla was until I was in my late 20s, which is kind of funny that
of course
we don't learn about him in school. And
right.
He invented whatever you want to call it, alternating current, and that is huge. And I mean, just anything else he did, just look at that, and that's
free energy.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things he did, and then Einstein didn't invent anything, and that's mind blowing to me. But but anyway, he thought that it was this ether a force. It's almost like there's, there is an atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric. I mean, that's still a term I'm using, but that's constant, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But I mean, that it's pushing on us from all sides, so it could be pushing us down against the ground as well. But I don't know, or is it the ether force? It's really, who knows at this point, or is it an electromagnetic force? That's what the electric universe theory is all about. That there is some type of electromagnetism, and that we are electrical beings. I mean, just look at how our brains work, and especially. I don't know if you've heard about earthing or grounding. I mean, but if I have a headache and I go take my shoes off and I go stand in the dirt for 20 minutes, my headache is gone. It always works. And they talk about how free radicals in our body are positively charged, the earth is negatively charged, and basically you complete the circuit, or you ground yourself out just like an electrical system. And I mean, it heals you basically. And so, I mean, if we're that connected to the earth in that way, then somehow maybe there is an electromagnetic force that is also pulling us down, pulls everything down. But I don't think we've come close to figuring out how that works yet. So
no, we haven't, because everyone thinks, oh, case closed, NASA figured it out, or Eratosthenes, or however you say his name. Oh yeah, he figured it out, and there's no need to question anything anymore. Now we can just, I don't know, focus on going to work and being wage slaves, I guess.
Yes, yeah, that's. you're a small, insignificant piece of dust. You don't matter.
YOLO.
So you might as well. Yeah, I hate that term. but you might as well just try to gain as much crap as you possibly can in your life, because that's all you'll ever amount to. So,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's no real inquiry into this stuff. Well, now there's been a resurgence of all of this, which we'll talk about later, because I think it's being led, just like every opposition is led for the most part. But for me, it kind of makes sense that we are in this almost this ocean, this sea of, I don't know whether you want to call it ether, or I don't know what else you could refer to it as, but it appears that this plane of existence, I almost picture it as we are at the bottom of an ocean. And, who knows what's above the water line up there. I don't know. But, I wanted to ask you, I have this kind of theory, okay, that, and I don't know, I'm kind of torn on which one it is because I don't have enough information. But do you think people like or am I saying it wrong, Eratosthenes? Eratosthenes? that guy with the weird name. But you know who I'm talking about, obviously. He was the first one that put forward the globe model. Is that correct?
I'm trying to remember. I know it was the ancient Greeks. I just can't remember who it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Eratosthenes. And do you think, now a lot of this was Freemasonic as well, do you think that they truly believed that we were living on a ball, and as our technology became better, they then figured out, oh crap, we totally aren't, but we don't want to look bad, so we're just going to keep this lie going? Or do you think that it was done from the beginning with the intention of just completely screwing up everyone's minds and enslaving us all?
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. And when I first started making videos, that's what I thought. I thought everything was a conspiracy, and that people, I mean, that this evil, or whatever you want to call it, goes all the way back to the Greeks. And I don't know so much now, because I started thinking about, especially after watching The Principle, the Catholic Church and how much control it had over everyone. It was terrible what the church was doing to people, and it made God scary. It made everyone was terrified of God, and it almost seems like scientists were truly just trying to disprove God to get out of the clutches of the church. So maybe it wasn't completely bad. I don't know. And what it really comes down to is really the sun. We can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense when you make a globe Earth. It has to be 93 million miles away, but you can easily prove that it's not 93 million miles away when you just look at the angle of sun rays on a cloudy day. Like in the afternoon, you can see that on two sides of the sun, you'll see angles that are at 45 degrees to the horizon, or to the horizontal. And I mean, those rays would intersect right above the clouds, and the excuse for that is that it's scattered. The light rays are scattering off the clouds, but then that should happen all over the sky, and not only where the sun appears to be, and that's only where it happens. So it's pretty easy to disprove that. And so, the ball model can kind of explain the sun, because it does explain sundials at the equator, because that's a problem for the flat disk map. It doesn't work in that sense. So I'm starting to wonder if over time people just kind of went nuts trying to prove what this world is, trying to make a model of it, and they just kept, like, somebody would get a really good model, and then the pride comes in, hey, I think I've got a model that works, and then they find something that's wrong with it, and they try to hush that person up, and
Right.
it's just been one big mess of trying to model this world. And now I'm questioning, what if we can't model it? What if we can't? What if it just does what it needs to do for us to live here? I mean, at a microscopic level, like you were talking about with quantum mechanics earlier, the model is very incomplete. The standard model in physics of how particles work and how everything comes into being, so to say, it's incomplete. It's very incomplete, in my opinion. And so at a microscopic level, we can't define this world. What if we can't actually do it at a macroscopic level? What if it's not a flat disk or a concave or anything? And people have just gone crazy over the centuries trying to define what it is. Or it could be, like you said, they wanted to make us, somebody maybe picked up on it over the time, if we make us this small insignificant piece of dust, then we all will be terrified of everything, because YOLO, and I only live once, and if you threaten my life, I'm scared, so I'll do what you say. So
right.
I don't know. Lots of theories on that one.
yeah. I mean, I know that this control goes back a long time, but I just look back and I look at all the ancient civilizations that all believed that we were living on a flat plane. They had some other more, kind of metaphors, like we're on the back of a tortoise and all these things.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, but I think they just kind of used their common sense, and they said, okay, we're all like planted firmly on the ground here, and the trees aren't blowing over like I'm going thousands of miles an hour, but I guess relativity would explain that. Yes,
yeah. And well, there is a map that appears to work. Not backing up a little bit. There's a guy called Free Energy on YouTube. I don't know if you've ever seen his work.
No.
It's free, and then energy is spelled with an A. It begins with an A, so it's all one word. He's basically showing that the Peters projection map, which is like basically the stupid Mercator map that they showed us in school, the big rectangle where Greenland's like twice the size of Africa. It's ridiculous. Well, he's showing that the Peters projection map, which is a rectangular map, just like that one we always saw, explains the sun's movement perfectly. The only problem with it is there's an edge, right? Like you're sailing through the ocean and then there's an edge, but we make that edge when we make that map. What I mean? We choose where to put that edge, so that edge is really only in our minds. So then that gets back into quantum mechanics and the idea that this is all kind of an illusion. And so if we try to model it and then we run into an edge, who made that edge? Us or whatever made this? I don't know. But going back into the ancients, I mean, they definitely, a lot of them thought it was flat, but there's some that thought it was a ball too, to maybe try to make a model. And I mean, the ancients did things that are just incredible too when you think about it. I've been looking into some of these structures that have been built in Peru and Bolivia. Actually, I've been looking into this for like 10 years. And I mean, just like as a structural engineer, I'm telling you, I don't think we could build this stuff.
No, we couldn't. That's why everyone's like, oh, we're so advanced. No, we're not. Yeah, I mean, we are not advanced at all.
Yeah, these structures in Peru, I mean, the way these blocks are cut, so precise. I mean, you would have to have some type of laser or something to cut these blocks, and then they're all stacked, so none of the lines in between the blocks line up, and they're all different sizes, so it's like a big puzzle they to put together. I mean, to design something like that alone would be hard, and then to actually build it, I mean, I don't know how they did it. And then, I mean, it's perfect for an earthquake. I mean, there's nothing that modern man or humans have built that could withstand an earthquake like these structures. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, our stuff is garbage compared to this, and it's just, I mean, I don't understand it. And to think that these people were stupid because they thought the Earth was flat, no, I don't know about that. So.
Yep, I agree. I mean, the pyramids, okay, could we recreate that today? Maybe with like tons of heavy machines, and it would take forever. But I mean, no one can really explain how they did it. Well, they kind of have. I don't know if you've heard of Coral Castle here in Florida.
Oh yeah, I've seen the theory on that with the sound, the resonance.
Yes.
That's interesting. I've wanted to go there and take a look at that. Some people claim it's been debunked. I don't know, but it does explain. I mean, if there is some way to levitate blocks like that, that would be one way of doing it. But yeah, like you said, I don't think we could build it today because, I mean, we're limited by this stupid fiat currency system that we live under. And so what we would actually do is just design a steel structured skeleton and slap a bunch of stucco on it and make it look like a pyramid like they would do at Disney World. I mean, that's what we would do because we can't afford it. It's ridiculous. So that's why we can't do it.
Yep, exactly. And I would love to take a trip down to Coral Castle or up. I don't really know what part of Florida it's in.
It's down in Miami area, I think, a little south of it maybe, somewhere down there.
Okay, interesting. And apparently it was one man that built this whole thing by himself.
Yep, yeah, and he had these things that look like ice cream cones apparently or something. Somebody saw him like moving blocks. I mean, that's how the story goes. So,
yeah, and I mean, he even has these doors with like, several tons. These big slabs that weigh several tons, and these doors, it's like a revolving door. I mean, he has it fit so perfectly that this big, huge, several ton slab of stone can be turned like a revolving door. Okay, sorry about that. I'll obviously edit that out. But, okay, so since we were talking about flat Earth maps, maybe we could talk a little bit about how these flat Earth maps keep popping up in movies. I mean, I saw one in Back to the Future. I think there are a few other movies. There's I forget the other one where there's another flat Earth map in the background. And also, you sent me a clip from the Alex Jones show where they had a very peculiar map in the background, and people probably wouldn't have caught it because it was just a sliver of it. But have you seen some of these compilation videos of flat Earth maps in movies?
Yeah, I have. I know I've been meaning to watch Dark City. I know in that movie it is a flat disk world. I haven't seen Back to the Future though. I'll have to look into that. And then there's some movie with Brendan Fraser where they've got kind of the same thing in the background. I've seen that one too. And then I've seen people show how the Matrix, the last Matrix movie implies a dome and a flat Earth, and it seems to be getting shoved in our face a little bit, or it's propaganda. I mean, I don't know what to make of it, especially that Alex Jones clip I sent you. That it clearly shows the behind, not Alex Jones, but the other guy with the beard. I mean, Alex Jones is comedy to me. I don't think it's it's definitely controlled opposition now. Yeah. But yeah, behind him, you can see there's a map that shows the North Pole and it shows Greenland. And then on the north part of Greenland, there's an entire block of ice that takes up the North Pole. When you look on Google Earth or any map, it doesn't show anything there. There's just water. And so, why are we seeing this on Alex Jones' show?
Right.
I mean, what are they? I mean, are they poking fun at the flat Earth movement, or I don't really know what to make of it. But
yeah, I mean, he hasn't even really touched the flat Earth thing. I think he might have mentioned it in passing, saying, "Oh, can you believe people are thinking we're living on a flat disc or something?" I don't know. I don't think he's really touched it.
Yeah, I know he made a comment about it, and that was all I heard too. But then, I mean, it's making it to mainstream news though now. I think the Guardian just did an article about it. The flat earther Tiger Dan basically jumped ship because he suddenly realized that Antarctica is a continent. But I mean, I don't know what to make of that.
He didn't know that? Wait.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm confused. So, wait, he was proposing that Antarctica was the ice wall?
Yeah, that's what he thought, and then now, he's saying that, oh no, look, it's a continent. People have been there, and then he made some other points, and he's now Flat Earth is a psyop, and then the Guardian jumps right on it and says it. So I mean, obviously, I think he was probably designed to do this movement. I mean, There's no way this thing just came out of nowhere. No. It's just like a grassroots, movement. No way. It's being pushed, and the flat disc map with the North Pole at the center, the circular map is the mainstream map, and that got pushed. It came out of nowhere. I mean, you just see this map all over the place, and everybody says this is what it is, and everybody jumps on that. And the Bible also, I've got an old Catholic Bible that basically has a picture of that in it with a dome. And then it's one or the other. It's either the globe or it's this flat disk map, and you have two choices. And then, the typical human dichotomy comes up, and people just start fighting over one or the other when it could be something completely different. So, yeah, I see it being pushed in movies and the news and other things to just make us choose sides, and and fight with each other.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I think it came out at a very strategic time, and I think it's being used kind of like a net to steer truth seekers, people that are questioning their reality, to steer them in a certain direction. I think it's also being used as a way to discredit truth seekers or people speaking out against corruption and lies, because it's definitely worked. I've been, doing podcasts for like a couple of years, and as soon as I did an interview with Dubé, it was as if, everyone wanted nothing to do with me anymore. I was a crazy psycho. I was stupid. I was the laughing stock of everything, So it definitely, it definitely worked its magic in that way.
It's I've had friends that aren't really talking to me anymore since I've gone to this one. I mean, I was real big on 9/11. That was the eye opener for me.
Same here.
And I mean, it's ridiculous what they told us now, especially doing what I do. But it seems like it's definitely divided the truth community too, the truth seeking community. Some of the people that don't believe it, and they're attacking us and saying it's a distraction, or it's a psyop. But another thing I was thinking about is it also kind of singles out the people who, the people that don't agree with us would say we're gullible, but I would think it's more along the lines people who are courageous enough to question whether their entire reality has always been a lie, and because that's too much for some people. They can't handle that. That's just too big of a lie, and because then they're not in control of anything, and then so they get angry and they don't want it to be true, so they could possibly be acting emotionally. And then also, like I said, like we're people that are questioning this and saying, hey, maybe we're not living on a spinning ball. We're singled out as people who will trust their own perception and their own judgment and not go with the herd and stand up for what they think might be true, regardless of the ridicule or embarrassment, whatever you want to call it. So it could do a lot if you really think about it. It seems to be doing a lot.
Yeah, and it's weird too. I saw Tila Tequila come out, and she's like making. Obviously, she is a mess of a woman. She's just had like a crazy celebrity life, and it was weird because about 2 years ago she was coming out being like full Nazi, Heil Hitler. She had like Third Reich regalia on, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I think she is being used basically as a way to discredit anyone that maybe is looking into World War II revisionism, how the Holocaust is a lie, and now this flat earth thing, because she came out and she's like, I'm actually a clone of myself and I've been microchipped and like I'm crazy and I believe in the flat earth too. So everyone that talks about flat earth, they're going to think Tila Tequila, whore, stupid. You're just like her.
Yep, exactly. I remember her a couple of years ago talking about being a clone and stuff. I didn't know about the World War II.
She has a picture, and of course it's like a slutty version of it, but she's wearing like a Swazi armband and like National Socialist Germany style uniforms, and it's just, it's really obvious to me. But see, everyone now, when that story came out from Tila Tequila, they're like, oh my God, she must be reading Sinead's blog. They're like one and the same, so that it worked because everyone was like, look, more proof that Sinead's a dumb idiot.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I'd say you're willing to question everything and look at things logically. So, I mean, it's definitely worked to divide us, and I do think I think it is very interesting that a lot of World War II revisionist stuff. I mean, the Greatest Story Never Told. I saw that in August of 2014. I remember I was actually I used to listen to Red Ice Radio all the time, the podcast while I was at work, and I mean they talked about secret space program, all kinds of crazy stuff, and I was always big into why haven't we seen the dark side of the moon? I mean, that's still a big question I meant to mention earlier. Like they supposedly released footage this year that's just ridiculous. It looks so fake. It's just stupid. and I mean, but people believe it. It's unbelievable to me. But I saw the great. I heard Dennis Wise came on. The creator of the documentary came on Red Ice Radio. And the host said, "Hey, watch the documentary before you listen to this." But I was working, so I said, "Whatever, I'm just going to listen to it." And he made a lot of good points. And I realized I'd never heard Germany's side of the story. It was always Hitler was evil.
Yep.
We got to go in there. Like he hated everybody. He wanted to kill anybody that wasn't blonde hair, blue eyed. That's what I always heard my whole life.
Yeah.
And then. So I listened to this guy talk and tell his story about growing up in the UK and his father fighting for Germany. I said, wow, that would be crazy to live like that, and his dad believing that Hitler was a good guy. And so then I said, okay, that's interesting. And then the next day I went to listen to that same radio show again, and it was completely taken off of iTunes. Like you couldn't even get to the podcast anymore. I'm like, what?
Oh,
okay, now there's something to this. So I went and watched the documentary. I mean, I was hooked. I watched all 6 hours of it, like almost in one sitting. And I thought that was the biggest thing I would ever discover in my life. And then now there's this. So and like 6 months later, I'm like all of a sudden like now there's flat Earth theory. What is going on here? Why is all of this stuff coming out all of a sudden? It's very strange. I'm not sure what to make of it.
Yeah, it is very strange, and I know that a lot of the times, the opposition is led because it's, they can control it then. So I think that this flat Earth thing came out. It was a strategic thing. I don't think, like you said, it was grassroots, because when you look at, have you ever seen those? I'm sure you have those Illuminati playing cards.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
Definitely. Yeah, and there's one, it has your typical, like everyone's idea of what a flat Earth would be. It's like this, like rectangle floating in space, and it says something like, flat Earthers, they may sound silly, but they know something, and it's interesting. And you had all of these other cards. There was one that had these two people on it that looked exactly like Alex Jones and Ron Paul.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
And it says controlled opposition on it. I know. It's ridiculous. And then there's another one. It has, like, I think the Friday the 13th Paris attacks. It had, what was the other one? It had one that looks like Donald Trump. It's really weird. So that's what just makes me think that all of these things, these like politicians and these ideas, they've been hashed out like a long time ago, and we're just watching a play. Basically, everyone assumes that that people voted for this. People's votes actually count.
Oh yeah, I realize that doesn't matter.
No, they don't, and that's why with like this white genocide thing, everyone's trying to say, it's because leftists voted for it. And yes, while Marxist leftists are brainwashed idiots, I truly don't believe that they have the power to to make this invasion happen. This was going to happen whether people voted for it or not, but having a bunch of brainwashed idiots that welcome it in is going to help their agenda.
Yeah, I don't think voting matters. I mean, Mark Twain even said, if voting made any difference, they wouldn't let us do it. And that, what was that, late 1800s? I mean, when I read that quote, Mark Twain was brilliant, and he was hilarious too. And it just makes too much sense. This whole, unfortunately, people don't like to hear this, but I don't think the United States is what we think it is. I think that, whatever happened in 1776 was all a big show, and we didn't really break away from England, especially if you look at the map of the English Empire in 1776. The United States is surrounded by British controlled territory. We were able to defeat them. I don't think so. I think it was all by design. And then you get into the Illuminati card game, which people just think, that's crazy, that's ridiculous, it's just a stupid card game that somebody made up. But it came out in the early 80s, and then all these things just start happening. Obama's on there too. I've looked through it all, and it's just mind blowing to me that these things do seem to happen. And the flat Earth card, like you said, it says flat Earthers know something, and it says know something is italicized. And it's just like, what? And that's what makes me think it's something bigger than just a flat map.
Yes.
Like it's something. There's something we're missing here, and maybe I'm leaning towards it is some kind of illusion, some type of. It's almost like it's a video game that we're all inside of, and maybe there's people within the game. Like obviously much more advanced, but people inside the game have, in a video game, the animations do whatever they do based on code that's running in the background. And maybe people within our game figured out how to get into the code and start messing with things. There's all this stuff about gematria and languages being tied to number systems.
Yes, absolutely. It is basically like a programming language.
Yeah, and then so if it is all an illusion, then I don't the idea that we can define it starts to become somewhat naive. I think I think that there's something bigger that we need to be looking at. I just don't know what that is. So.
Me neither. And that's why I've started to look into things like the concave theory, because me being skeptical, not trusting anything, I'm like, okay, why are they pushing this flat earth model so heavily? But no one ever talks about the concave, which basically is just another theory that we are actually inside of a sphere. And I don't know I know that there are some National Socialist occultists that proposed this as well. They had a bunch.
Really?
I've been looking into it a bit. They also had, the hollow Earth theory. So I don't know how much they did like experimentation. I wish I had more time for research. Unfortunately, I don't. But that just, to me, it's like, okay, they're pushing this flat Earth map, and to me, it has flaws. I've realized that it does have flaws. It does kind of make sense to me, though, having a circular, with one pole. Because to me, it just kind of represents like the eye. I don't know. It intuitively makes sense to me, except for some of the discrepancies, like with the moon phases and things like that. I haven't really completely hashed that out. But just the fact that no one wants to talk about any other possibilities other than flat. And if you do, like, you're banned from forums and stuff.
Yeah, and the big thing about concave is the leader of the movement. I mean, he goes by Lord Stephen Christ and claims he's the incarnation of Christ, and it's just it's nuts. And I made my most recent video was based on the concave experiment, or the rectilineator experiment, which is a terrible name, but it basically showed they did an experiment in Naples Beach that showed that the beach actually curves, or the water line actually curves up, and so I tried to come up with something like based on that was simpler that we could do, that could be built on land, and just to show whatever the curvature is. I don't really care what it is. I just want to know what it is. And within hours of posting that video, Stephen Christ was on my video, like posting things, telling him, like, saying I stole his idea and everything. I said, no, I gave you the credit for it. Actually, I mentioned it in the video.
Yeah.
And it starts to look nuts. So, like, you look at anybody who looks into concave Earth theory finds him and like, this guy thinks he's Jesus Christ. This is crazy. And then you look, it just seems insane. So you don't even look. Yeah, exactly. I
mean, another thing too, I think that this flat Earth stuff is being brought out to reinforce religion as well, because I think the Quran talks about a flat plane, the Bible talks about a stationary, non-moving Earth, and now a lot of these like fundamentalist Christians are on board. They're like flat Earth Christians now, and the Bible is right, and I think it's just being used as another way to enforce religion. Too. Yes.
That especially the big three, and that's a big thing for me, because I rejected Catholicism when I was a kid, because it's just I just could not accept that I need to be scared of whatever created me.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Catholic Sunday school, you are said you have to be terrified of life, and I wasn't buying that, and of course, being raised as an engineer, basically, I was also looking at science. So I kind of, there's that religion science dichotomy that's also created by that. And so I went pure science. And then when I started getting back into quantum physics and astronomy, when I went and took it, when I was taking astronomy at UNF, I went back to school to take that because I had questions. This was way before I found out about flat Earth theory, but I ran into some people that were basically promoting the Vedas and the Indian religious books, the Bhagavad Gita, and a lot of those ancient texts. And I started reading that stuff. I'm like, whoa, this is way different. It's not Christianity with another skin. It's completely different. And it starts to talk about consciousness and all kinds of things. And these books are also older than anything any religious books I've been able to find. It seems like they're the oldest stuff we know of, at least. And so I started reading that, and then it also it talks about consciousness, which basically it says God is consciousness, and then it also talks about how the world is an illusion, just kind of like quantum physics had been showing in the early 1900s. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So I take everything with a grain of salt. I wish I could read all religious books so I can form my own opinion, because I'm not going to side with any one religion. But it's very interesting especially for somebody in the West, to just open their mind to other things. Not choosing science or one of the big three religions.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I've been told by, several people that I'm going purely off of emotion and I'm not using my logic or reason. And I'm thinking, what? You're projecting what you feel about yourself onto me because I think I am using logic. I'm asking questions and looking for proof. Because if someone wasn't using their logic, they would say, oh, well, I believe it because I've been told that. It's like strange to me that people don't even understand that they're projecting that onto other people. It's odd. It's like a heavy form of, mind control.
Yeah. And one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is how I make decisions. How I think logically. If I'm at work and I'm designing a framing system or something, and I'm trying to pick a beam size or something like that. Like I have all different options for different beams. It's just like the example I like to use in my head or when I explain this to people is, I have different size beams I can use, different weights. Some are stronger, some are based on their section properties. Some will deflect more, whatever. When I'm looking at it and I come down to like two beams or whatever I'm going to choose, I choose the one that feels right. Of course, there's all the properties and there's all the logic that goes with it, but it's something about, this decision feels good. I feel good about it, so I make that decision. So, there is some emotion that goes into logic. And, we're not just complete robots as we've been told to think we are. Only our minds make decisions. I don't really.
Yes,
I'm not buying that too much anymore.
Same here. And I think that we are in this mess because we've forgotten that magical, unknown, unseen, right-brained kind of thing. That intuition that you can't see it, but it's there kind of thing,
Yeah.
And the left brain is very analytical and logical, and what I see is what it is, and that's it. There's nothing else. So I think we've kind of gone to like the extreme over there, and not that going to the other extreme of the right brain being like all, ruled by emotion. That's not good either. But I think, bringing it back into the middle is a good thing.
Yes,
so,
definitely.
Yeah. I was wondering, when people ask you, hey, Brian, why do you question that we are living on a spinning ball? I mean, what are the main things that you tell people as, your explanations for why you are questioning this or are believing that we may not be on a ball? What are some of the things that you tell people?
The first thing I say is how because I started off trying to prove the whole thing wrong. Just like I did with 9/11 and everything else. You try to prove something wrong, you ended up figuring out that you can't.
Yes.
And then it's to say, okay, so there is something to this. And so the first thing I did was I started saying, all right, I drew a circle in AutoCAD, which is the basic drafting software that most engineers use. And I just drew a circle with a radius of 3,959 miles, which is the radius of Earth, and I started offsetting lines to see how much drop I should see to the curve from a horizontal view or a level view. And I was also checking the curvature chart with all the stuff that was just came out of nowhere with flat Earth theory. And so I said, okay, I shouldn't be able to see very far. I should only be able to see a few miles. So I drove over to Cape Canaveral with a pair of binoculars, and I was literally laying down on the beach, trying to look over the top of the ocean towards a piece of the port that juts out. I was about 7 miles south of it, and I could clearly see the beach. I could see the waves washing up on it. I'm just like, I shouldn't be able to see this. But I said, okay, well, this isn't that great of an experiment. But so I got a telescope, and I went to Lake Apopka in pretty close. It's in Central Florida. It's the second largest lake in Florida. And I put my telescope, right at the shore, and it's 8 miles across the other side. There should be roughly a 40-foot drop there. I shouldn't be able to see the shore, but sure enough, I could see the shore. And that's when I said, well, wait a second, how come I can see this stuff? This is nuts. Mm-hmm. And you start reading about how many, there's that picture of, people talk about you can see Chicago sky, you can see the whole Chicago skyline from Michigan. That's 60 miles away. You shouldn't be able to see that. That's the biggest thing first is, okay, you can see stuff a lot farther away than you should be able to if we live on a sphere with a circumference of 25,000 miles or
right.
radius of almost 4,000 miles, whatever you want to say. Okay, so that's a big one first. And of course, the excuse for that is light bends or whatever, and there's all these excuses about our eyes playing tricks on us. So I say start with that, and then look at the sun. Just look at the sun and the moon. That's the other big one for me is just watch them move around. And what do you think? What do you think you're seeing happening? You've been your entire life, you've been shown all these pictures and you've seen all this stuff about space and the solar system. It's always on a TV screen, or it's in some virtual state that gets put into your imagination, and you start imagining this model that you live in, and you don't actually go outside and look at it. You're inside. You're in a classroom. You're in your house. You know, you're watching Carl Sagan or Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatever these guys are tell you what this world is. And then when you go outside and start looking at it, is that what you're really seeing? Do you believe that that's what you're really seeing? Are you absolutely sure about that? And that's the best way to start with it, because that's what I tried to do. I just wanted to prove that that's what I was seeing, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it at all.
Right.
So I think those are the two big things. And then the big one for me, though, was I started laughing when it really hit me, because how do rockets move in space? I mean, what are they, or spatial? Yeah. How do you're spraying oxygen or whatever they're using to propel something into infinite nothingness, and the moment that the oxygen leaves a nozzle, a jet nozzle or anything, it would expand infinitely in all directions. It wouldn't push off of anything. So how could it even move?
I know. I've heard so many weird justifications for that. I think one person tried to tell me that it creates its own oxygen or something, and I mean, it made no sense. They'll just try and explain away the most obvious frickin' lies. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, you'd have to look into space too, like look into like all the theories and everything. Like I'd already been looking into it my whole life, so when the question hit me, like I said, that it was all fake, I said, "Oh my gosh, that makes a lot more sense."
Yes.
So, and then also watch the ISS videos, watch the hoax videos of the ISS, and I mean, just watch them on the space station. Do you really think they're up there? I mean, just go with your gut. I mean, like if I was on the space station, I would be showing off more. You know, I would have a GoPro cam. You know, if I was up in space flying around, I'd be having the camera with me, like looking out into space, looking out at the Earth. But they never do anything like that. They're always stationary. And then whenever they're doing spacewalks, they're always looking down at Earth. They're never looking the other way. The camera never pans, 180 degrees or 360 degrees. It's just it's so limited. It doesn't seem like it's real. And so why would they be faking it? That's the big question that comes up. And then, of course, when I've been meaning to do an episode on the thermosphere where the ISS is supposed to be, the temperatures up there we're told get up to 2,000 degrees Celsius. Yeah. Aluminum melts at like 660 degrees Celsius. How are they there? And they say, well, I remember this in my astronomy class, and then my professor stood there and said, yeah, the temperature up there is 2,000 degrees Celsius, but you can't actually measure the temperature with a thermometer because the particles are all too far apart. But when you really start to think about that, hot goes to cold. That's a basic law of thermodynamics.
Right.
Hot always moves to cold. So if you have this area of the atmosphere that's surrounded by that's hot and surrounded by cold space, something has to constantly heat it, or the heat's going to dissipate. So whatever is heating those particles, no matter how far apart they are, is also going to heat a solid space station that's up there. So it's really getting into. Do you think that NASA's really been telling us the truth? I mean, I guess start with the moon landing too is the other thing, because I realized in college the moon landing was BS. I mean, just like I started watching videos, and I'm like, this is so stupid. They didn't go to the moon. I thought it was
so obvious.
I know. I thought it was to fool the Russians, but
so they're all in it.
Yeah, no, and that also tells you that they are all working together in
yes.
this and that. I've believed for a while now, especially since watching World War II revision history, that all these countries have been working together and they are really screwing us. And then when you get into the space program, wow, yeah, this backs it up even more. So
yep. Even JAXA, the Japanese space. I forget what it stands for, but yeah, the Japanese space program. I mean, I've seen videos from them and other space programs as well, where you can see bubbles coming out of their, scuba gear, which is really their space suit. I mean, it's so ridiculous. They filmed these spacewalks in big tanks. I remember touring NASA as a child, and I saw one of these tanks. They made it seem like it was, this is a training area.
Yeah,
this is where they train for their spacewalks. Yeah, they are training for their frickin', like synchronized swimming. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's another thing that drives me crazy. Is they take about roughly $17 billion a year from us. NASA does. And then they have the audacity to charge us $80 to go to Kennedy Space Center, and it kind of sucks, to be honest. So it's not
so
that cool.
stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it should be free if we're paying all this money.
Yeah, it absolutely should be free. And I also remember I watched one of the space shuttles, which is really just a freaking plane. I watched that land, and I remember being probably 5 or 6, and I was like, this is stupid. I thought I was going to see a spaceship. This is a plane.
Yep.
I was like, the illusion was already kind of like ending for me. I'm like, oh, really? This is it?
Yeah.
A plane?
Yeah. You feel you start to realize when you start to question the space program that it's kind of like an amusement park. It's kind of like Disney World.
That's what it is.
Of course, and then the proximity to Disney World, it makes a lot of sense that they're probably working together. So.
Absolutely. And all of these, shuttle launch sites will be near bodies of water, so they can, conveniently go out of the view of the spectators and then land in the water.
Yeah. And what's funny is I grew up in Jacksonville, and when I was in college, I went to college at UNF, and I used to ride my bike a lot at Hanna Park, which is right on the beach, and there would always be the spot I'd take a break at, and I'd ride up onto the back of the sand dunes, and I'd go out in the sand dune, I'd just sit there and just look at the ocean and relax for a minute. And one time I just went out there and I got so lucky, I just happened to sit down and I looked down south and I saw a shuttle take off. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. What kind of luck is that? I remember watching it. I watched it go out, and I watched it start to arc over the ocean out towards the east, and then it started to look like it was going down a little bit. And I'm like, "What?" I was like, "Is that the curvature of the Earth that's following?" I guess. I mean, back then I was only.
That's got to be the curvature.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s. I'm like, okay, and then it kind of just disappeared from my view. So I was like, that's kind of weird. And then when I looked into this, I went, oh my gosh, the shuttle wasn't going into space. It was landing. It was probably taking off and landing somewhere when it drops the boosters. So it's
It's such a production, and you're absolutely right. It's just an extension of Hollywood and Disney. I mean, even the fake CGI photos of the supposed ball planets. You have Pluto, which has the silhouette of the Disney character dog Pluto on it.
Yep.
And then you have the word sex. The word sex is in the clouds, upside down on the. On the ball Earth, and it's the exact same font that they use for the Lion King. I don't know if you know about the hidden perverted things in Disney movies.
Yeah.
It's the same exact font.
Yeah, the priest at the end of the Little Mermaid is the worst. That's so weird.
Gross. I know.
I've seen that stuff. It's
such a
crazy.
joke.
And another thing I was going to point out is every country that has a space program also has a privately owned central bank, so that says a lot right there. So.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a black hole. They're just sucking all of the money into it, and they put on these fake productions, and then the rest of it, I don't know where it's going. I guess it's going to basically fund our genocide and go and kill innocent people.
Yes, I know.
It's funding that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's the question I'm asking now is what's... Okay, they've obviously been faking this. We're catching on to it big time. More and more people are starting to realize that at least the space programs are fake. I mean, besides flat Earth, if you want to say the Earth is flat, you want to say it's concave, whatever. I mean, or you want to still believe we live on a spinning ball and that the heliocentric model is right. The space programs, I mean, that's actually, now that we're talking about it, that's the best place to start. I mean, do you really think they're up there? Do you really think that a spaceship can move in an infinite vacuum? What's it going to push against? I do believe Newton's basic laws of motion. You have an object in motion stays in motion, or an object in motion stays at rest unless it has an opposite, unless you have a reaction from an outside force. If an object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force is the basic law. So when a plane is flying through the air, it's sucking in. A jet engine sucks in air and forces it out the back. And it basically creates a little column of air, and all of the relatively stationary air around it, friction forms between that column of air and the air around it and pushes the plane forward. But you don't have that in space. There's nothing to push against. Right. Everything moves on Earth by pushing off of something else when you really think about it. So how are these things moving? Exactly. There's no really good explanation for that. And of course, if we went to the moon and they've got Voyager, these probes that went to the limits of the solar system, and how are they moving? It doesn't make any sense. And then they also have pictures of Voyager taking pictures of of planets and then pictures of Curiosity taking pictures of itself taking pictures. It's so stupid.
Oh my God, it's such a joke. It's such a joke. And I mean, if you look at some of the footage, I think there's even like a whole compilation of ISS fails where it's just so obvious that they're like, there's green screens, or people will say, but they're floating. Look at them. I don't see any harnesses. Do you ever go to the movies? Do you see how real that looks? I mean, just watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that was what, the 70s?
That was actually 2 years before the moon landing, I think.
And
I think it was
Stanley
1967.
Kubrick, who I think is responsible for shooting the fake moon landing.
Oh yeah, then there's the whole. Have you seen the people point out that in The Shining?
Yes, he wears the Apollo shirt.
Yeah, I know. He was trying to tell us something, and then
he was. I think he was haunted by the fact that he lied.
Yeah, because he realized how much it screwed us up. People start thinking that they're insignificant nothing, and we become completely, devoid of any type of spirit or anything. We're just nothing. It's destroyed us.
It really has. And then when you look at his other films, like Eyes Wide Shut, which they chopped out about 45 minutes of that film. Yeah,
I was just about to say that. He died right before it was released.
Yep.
And it was released on the day, on 30 years to the day that Apollo 11 was launched. I mean, and he insisted that it was released that day. It's crazy. I mean,
he was definitely trying to give us a message there, I'd say.
I don't know, but people say, it's just a conspiracy theory, it's a coincidence. But that's a huge coincidence. He really was, and then he died. But he was old. I mean, it's just.
People are too naive. I don't know. They think that I'm too suspicious, but time and time again, we're proven to have been lied to. So I don't forget being burnt. Okay, I remember that.
So the world is a screwed up place. We know people do evil things. Why is it so hard to believe this on a big scale? But
right,
I don't know.
Yeah, since we're talking about the thermosphere, maybe we can get into satellites a little bit too. I'm sure people are listening to this just like, what the hell, space? This isn't real. ISS, this isn't real. Satellites aren't real. I mean, I can't 100% prove any of this to anyone, but my common sense is telling me the thermosphere, I forget exactly how warm you said it was or how hot. How can satellites not burn to shreds? And how are they able to, I guess they're able to enter orbit, so they just, do their thing up there, circling around within the vacuum, and there are definitely satellites within the thermosphere. Well, we're told, right. And that's where the ISS is, and then or supposed to be, and then there's also satellites that are outside of it in the exosphere, and then out into space. And they're supposed to move the same way. They're supposed to have oxygen jets on them, which, I mean, I would think they would run out of that pretty quick. Right, what do they go up and, refill them or something?
Yeah, of course not. They don't. And then another thing to point out is you never see a single satellite in any of the ISS spacewalks. You never see a satellite go whizzing by.
Or stars, really.
Yeah, they tell us that there's thousands of them up there, and what? Yeah, there's no stars.
And how are they not colliding with one another?
I know I mean, you would think it would be so dangerous to be up there, and I mean, because it's so hard to move and control yourself in space, but based on everything we see in the movies. But I mean, I don't think you'd be able to control your movement at all once you left the atmosphere if we were on the spinning ball. Right. But another thing is, the biggest thing is that people always say is, what about GPS? Well, GPS was actually developed during World War II, and it went into service using all relay towers before there were any satellites ever launched. So how do we know it's not working off of relay towers to this day?
Exactly.
Even the technicians, when you really start to think about this, the technicians that work on this stuff, they're trying to pick up a signal. They don't know where the signal's coming from. If they think it's coming from the sky, of course it's coming from a satellite, or it could come from a relay tower or something else. And then, another thing that really got to me is I used to work in the telecom industry a little bit. I did some work with cell phone towers, just analyzing towers when they put more and more equipment on it, because the cell phone, mobile phones are just booming. There's more and more. They're upgrading stuff more and more. And I started thinking about this, why do we need all these towers? Why are they constructing all these new towers if we have all these satellites? We could definitely, we were told they had satellite phones before we had cell phones. They were using satellite phones in the 80s and the 90s, and now we have to build all these towers? This doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
What's going on here? So,
right, and people will say, oh, but Google Earth, okay, prove that. Well, we can have high altitude spy planes taking huge snapshots of things, and with the the digital quality of photos these days, you can zoom in and you can get details. And I mean, it's really not that crazy to explain GPS and Google Earth without the use of satellites, but people just can't even fathom it. They're like, no, but I saw the pictures of the satellite. I encourage everyone right now to either pause this or just go to your Google Images and type in pictures of satellites and tell me if those look real. Okay? It's ridiculous. It's like a science fiction book.
Yeah, it all looks like CGI. It's really mind blowing when you start to get into it. I mean, this was funny to me. I started laughing at myself for I mean, I take everything as humorous in this world after finding out how just screwed up it is. But yeah, when I started looking at those pictures, I was cracking up. It's like, wow, this can't be real. But a few years ago, I went to Yosemite in California. I went out there with a buddy and or some friends, and we went camping. And we were out by a riverbed at night just looking at the sky. I mean, the stars out there are incredible. I'd never seen stars like that in my life because I'd always been in the city. And I was laying on my back looking up at the sky, and I saw this star, look like a star, moving through the sky pretty fast. And I mean, not like a shooting star. And I thought it was a satellite. And, back then this was actually right before I took astronomy. And there's these stars at night, especially before dawn, that you'll see that move across the sky, and you say, "Oh, that's a satellite. That's what I think they are. That's what we've been told they are." And a few months ago, I went out with some skeptical friends of mine, and one that's starting to see the things I'm seeing. And we went out. I just wanted to show them planets and stuff. I took my telescope out, and it was very cold for Florida, and it was maybe about 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, just before dawn. We had all these stars. We were all just kind of standing there talking. We were done playing with the telescope. And all of a sudden, my friend said, "Wow, that star is moving. It's just moving." And we all look up, and there's this moving star. And we're like, "What is that?" And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 more started moving, or they just appeared out of nowhere. And one of my friends, she swears that one of them was stationary, and then it just started moving.
I've seen the same thing, Brian.
Yeah, I know. And so I always thought those were satellites, but when you really think about it, how could something that small, that far away, be emitting, reflecting so much light back at us? It doesn't really make any sense. No. And then one of them, it looked like it changed direction, like almost made a 90-degree turn.
Wow.
That would be impossible. I mean, there's just no way that if that was a satellite. So what are those things? That's what I want to know. I mean,
I want to know that too. And I've seen this for a long time, especially very late at night when I'm up, putting my son back to bed or something. I'm looking out the window, and I've seen that where it stops and starts and stops and starts, and it's not a plane because I know, it'll like hide behind a tree for several minutes and then continue. And I know what planes look like. I see them all the time, but this is like a bright, bright light. It's not like a blinking small little light from a plane.
Yeah, it's definitely comparable to the stars around it that aren't moving, and that's why it's not a plane. You can definitely tell a plane, and I don't know. I want to know what those things are. A lot of people think that the ancients the ancients called the planets wandering stars, but I'm wondering if these things are what they were talking about. That these things were always there, because if they're not satellites, then they always should have been there.
Right. So and are they? It seems that they are conscious. I mean, can we directly affect these? Can we communicate with them? I don't know, but it seems as if they have a mind of their own.
Yeah, it's almost like a game of freeze tag or something. Like, oh crap, they see us and they stop moving. Like, I feel like we're being messed with sometimes when I'm looking at the night sky. I really do. And actually, since we were talking about movies, I watched the new Mad Max movie recently, and there's a scene in the movie where Charlize Theron and an old woman are sitting on a sand dune in the desert, and they're looking up at the night sky, and one of those stars that we're talking about goes through the sky, and the old woman points at that. This is in a post-apocalyptic world. She points at the star and says, the movie star, she goes, "That used to be called a satellite." I started laughing so hard. I'm like, really? Like, this is a new movie that just came out in 2015. Like, this is crazy. Like, it's such, like, why would they put that in there? I mean, that's nobody's asking questions would think anything of that, but now it's just like, reinforcing that those are satulites. Crazy.
They're really screwing with our perception of the sky. And I know when we were talking, when we got together, you were talking about your theories of what they're actually spraying up there, and was it cement ash that you speculated it might be?
Oh yeah, with the trails in the sky.
Yeah,
People call them chemtrails.
Yeah, can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, well, my theory is that it is fly ash, or that it's some mixture of that and other stuff. I mean, I've recently been watching other stuff about it. I mean, there's so many theories out there about what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, people say that this is crazy. I mean, some people think that the chemtrail idea is crazier than flat Earth.
I know.
I mean, when I was a kid, I used to play Microsoft Flight Simulator because I kind of wanted to be a pilot. My dad actually worked in the airline industry, so he took me to see some of the machines that serviced airplane, like commercial airliners, and he's always talking about how commercial airliners bank, and I mean, it's a cool job.
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to do that as well. So I used to watch planes when I was a kid, and I remember seeing contrail. What a real contrail is, a trail that's dissipating a certain distance behind the plane, like it's disappearing as the plane's moving. And I remember asking my dad, and he told me that's just that's ice. That's the thrust from the engine is heating up the air, and it's I forget exactly how it works, but the ice is melting as it's moving. And then I remember maybe when I was in middle school or something, I remember I had this memory hit me maybe a couple months ago. I was thinking about this, and I remember being on my BMX bike when I was a kid and seeing a trail for like the first time in the middle of the late 90s. And I remember thinking, is that a rocket? What was that? And I remember looking at it with my friends and thinking, that's crazy, because that didn't happen before. And then all of a sudden, it just, I mean, we're not paying attention to the sky. They start spraying more and more, and it's just gradually introduced, and we get so used to it that we think it's always been like that. But it hasn't always been like that. I know that.
No, it hasn't.
And now it's just ridiculous. I mean, it definitely seems like they're taking off from Canaveral.
Yes.
From my front yard, I watch them. They take off vertically. It seems like they take off vertically, and they're moving too. They move faster than commercial airliners, whatever it is. Yeah. And so, what is it? What are they spraying? And I did some research on, I looked into some stuff about the military buying large amounts of fly ash, which is a byproduct of burning coal. And you can go to the FedBiz or whatever it is where they show military purchases or just any government purchases, and they buy fly ash. And the military buys lots and lots of fly ash, and it's a cementitious material that they use in concrete, or it's used to replace Portland cement and concrete. And concrete's made up of cement, rock, and sand, and water basically. And the cement absorbs the water, and that's what causes the concrete to cure and become hard. And a lot of over the years, they've been replacing Portland cement with fly ash, and saying that there's all these studies. I mean, this is a conspiracy, which I think within the structural engineering world, the people I work with laugh. But now I've kind of proven that concrete is better without it, because I keep pulling it out of the stuff on our projects because it sucks. And they say that it makes concrete stronger and all this stuff, and so they're putting it in concrete because I think they're trying to get rid of it, because the EPA has classified it as a toxic waste. And so if you want to control the weather, though. And I started thinking about it, cement absorbs water, and fly ash does the same thing in concrete, just not as well. If you spray this stuff in the sky, it would absorb water. If you're trying to keep it from raining or trying to
engineer
make droughts. Yes, I mean, it's a possibility. I'm not saying that this is what it is. It's just a theory I have, but it does make sense, because you would have loads and loads of this stuff. It would be, I mean, they're giving it away because they're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Why not spray it in the sky?
That's how the fluoridation programs started. They needed to dump it.
Yeah, exactly.
So they come up with some bullshit excuse like, it makes your teeth healthy, and then they just dump it in our municipal water supply.
Yeah,
and then they find out, oh, sweet, it makes them docile and stupid. Great, perfect.
Yeah, that's it. It's nuts. Yeah. What does ingesting fluoride do for your teeth? I mean, that's a big question I ask people. But
nothing. Well, it gives you fluorosis a lot of the times.
Yes, yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah, we are definitely being poisoned, and to say things like this, people say, "Oh, it's so crazy! You're out of your mind. They would never do that." But people will do horrible things for profit, and
Absolutely.
for control, and it's nuts. I mean, I fortunately I bought myself a reverse osmosis filter, so I think get all the fluoride out of my water. Yeah. But at least my drinking water, I still have to shower in it, unfortunately.
Right.
But the other thing with the trails is they always seem to spray in the east in the morning and in the west in the evening.
Yep.
Almost, and I mean, around Christmas, I was watching them. I was up in Jacksonville. I was actually at Hanna Park again, where I told you the story about the shuttle. Mm-hmm. And I was riding my bike there, and I was on the beach again, that same spot, and I watched two planes do a circle around the sun, just spraying. I'm like, this is insane. I can't believe this is happening. And I'm just like, there's so many people on the beach because the weather was really nice around Christmas time. I'm just like, nobody's looking up.
Nope.
Like, nobody knows what's going on above their
idea.
heads. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And but if I even say anything, everybody's like, you're nuts. But I've been, people I work with, I've been pointing this out, and they're finally like, some days it's been so ridiculous lately. They're like, okay, this is
it's a grid.
Yeah, something. One day I was driving to Tampa with a coworker, and it was actually settling. We could see it settling, and it reduced our visibility to like a mile.
Wow.
And we're like, this is. And he's like, okay, man, I think you're right. And I'm like, yeah, you see, I'm not nuts. Like, I mean, what I'm seeing, I'm trusting my eyes. I'm trusting what I'm seeing. So,
right.
This didn't happen when I was a kid. Same thing. So.
It didn't. NASA has had to come up with a new classification of cloud.
Oh yeah, because
we don't even see normal clouds anymore. They're like these wispy, like disgusting little, like gross looking things. And you don't see like a nice fluffy cloud and like a deep blue sky. It's always this gray, hazy, milky, gross color. And also I've noticed that they're putting chemtrails into things like children's TV shows, video games, everything. So then these kids grow up not knowing anything different, and they say, oh, it's normal, it's just the contrails, and oh, it's it's in this video here. And I think they may even like go back and put them in other films too. I'm not quite sure, but
And then it's just so common when they're filming a show, they're actually there,
Right.
They're just in the background. I was watching a show recently, and I saw a plane flying in the distance. I'm like, yep, I think they're actually filming that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the question that I have too, because if the sole purpose of the spraying is to poison us, I wonder how. Well, I think that's one of them. Obviously, they just want to dump this stuff. But if it is toxic, how are they not affected by it? And then I led to more questions. Are they human? Do they live here? Do they not react to this in a way that we do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it like some type of terraforming program?
Right.
I don't know what it is. It's
right.
I mean,
or is it just to obstruct our view of the sun? Because like you were saying, they really do seem to spray in front of the sun. Do they want us to not be able to see what's going on up there? I think it's a psyop as well to make us feel powerless.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point too. I've heard other people say that. It does make you feel very powerless.
Of course, you're like a little fly that they're spraying and you're exterminating.
Yeah, no, I've got some gardens in my front yard, and I've been trying to grow my own food. And then I just look up at the sky. I'm just like, this is so demotivating.
I know. It's like you have your little organic garden, and then you're like, oh, yeah, but I'm being poisoned. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, best case scenario, it is just fly ash, which wouldn't really hurt us too bad. It's probably not very good for us to breathe, and they're just trying to hide some celestial events that are happening. Today the sky's perfectly clear. I was walking around like, oh, wow, a blue sky. I haven't seen this in forever. This is awesome.
Not here.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. And we're not too far away. We're like 45 minutes away, but here it's like hazy. I don't see any trails, but it's hazy. Yeah.
This was earlier this morning. I haven't been out. Yeah, but there's always kind of a haze. I guess I'm just used to that. I think I'm just happy. I think I'm just happy not to see any trails being sprayed.
I know. That's so sad. We're like, oh, what a clear day, and it's like freaking disgusting.
Yeah,
beautiful day out.
I think Cape Canaveral is definitely like a hub for these things. But I mean, I don't know if they're taking off from there. I've been meaning to just drive over there on one day when it's busy and see if I can catch them taking off.
I've seen them take off in some of the weirdest places. Okay, when I lived in New York City, this is when I was starting to wake up to this, because I could literally I was living in a high rise, and I was the last floor, so I could walk up to the roof. And it was as if I could almost reach out and touch these things. Okay, that's how close they were. And I was watching them settle over the whole city. Now, and then I started documenting them, and everyone thought I was crazy. I would walk up to people on the street and be like, do you see what's going on? Do you see what they're spraying? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm like, you guys, look. I would just walk up to people on the streets of New York City. But I saw these planes taking off. It couldn't have been a commercial airliner, because it literally went straight up in the air like a rocket. So it's making me think that there's some kind of like Air Force planes or something, and they're taking off maybe from Air Force bases, or they could be taking off from airports as well. But I don't even think these things are manned by people. I think that they could be possibly unmanned airplanes and be, like drones, because you can keep your hands clean, if you don't have people like giving out secrets.
Oh yeah, definitely. I came to that conclusion that they've got to be remote controlled. I mean, with all the drones we have, it would be very easy to fly these things remotely, or just, I mean, you only have a couple pilots that are in on it and they just fly it.
Yes.
Or they fly it from a computer somewhere. Yeah. I've wondered if it's connected to what our world really is, and a lot of the. I remember seeing some concave theory that there's this big glass ball in the sky. That's what like the universe we're looking at. Everything's inverted, and it's been damaged. They've shot missiles at the firmament or something, and they're trying to repair it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
I've heard some crazy theories, like the ice dome, and like when they're these supposed meteors fall, or like people have had like big chunks of ice fall out of the sky. I mean, that could just be from weather patterns and heating and cooling, but there's some weird stuff. I guess there's like a video of a rocket that took off, and they say that it hit the dome, but I don't know, it's like you can't really conclusively say that it hit a dome. It just kind of stopped, like once it reached a certain height, it just stopped.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen that video too. I mean, it sounds like they edited in like a clunk sound to make it sound like it hit the dome.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that I don't know. I think the booster just died and it just stopped going up. But that's not good enough proof. It's interesting though. It was a cool video to watch. But I don't know what these trails are. That's actually become more of a concern for me lately, because
it directly affects us.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I got so, as we were talking about earlier, I got so wrapped up in flat Earth theory. I mean, I've never made videos, and then I got so into this because it was so interesting. But at the same time, I felt like, okay, if the reason I started making videos, I was never into. I mean, I was always truth seeking, but I was never actually doing any work of my own.
Right.
I thought for a moment that maybe flat Earth theory, whatever it is, and showing that all the space programs were fake, would maybe show the world like, hey, we're being screwed by everybody.
That's what I thought too.
But then I was naive, because it was really just to make us look crazy. So
learn that one.
Yeah. Whoops.
Whoopsies. Well, at least I was the guinea pig, because I don't really care. But and I noticed, I actually was able to wake a lot of people in the flat Earth community up to like Jewish control and white genocide. So I think that was a victory. But it's just such a crazy thing. And people will always argue, well, it doesn't directly affect me, so why do you care? And, yes, they do have a point. It really doesn't matter what shape the frickin' Earth is. But I just am, I'm a very inquisitive person, and I'm constantly, wanting to understand things more. So that's my motivation for it. But, yes, they have a point. It doesn't directly affect us, but chemtrails do. Space program, lying, stealing trillions of our dollars, that affects us.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe if we can focus on kind of the most pressing matters first, it'll all kind of come together. But since we were talking about planes, I was wondering, do you know anything about gyroscopes in planes and how they basically prove that, they're coasting on a flat plane or above a flat plane the whole time?
I've seen stuff about that. I haven't really looked into it much.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, like I want to research this so much and I want to focus on it, but I'm kind of reached the conclusion, like you just said, like there's a lot of stuff that's really bad in this world. I mean, we're kind of in deep shit right now. I think, like, especially with the economy, and I mean, a one world government is coming. Like, these things are still happening.
It's here.
And it's here. I mean, I think it was here in 1945.
Yeah.
But these things are still happening, and like I see there's other people out there that I believe are legit, and I see them so focused on flat Earth now, and I'm just like, no, it actually kind of hit me recently, like, oh crap, like these people were doing good things, talking about all this, all these all these economic problems and exposing the elite and all this stuff, and
it's been derailed. Yeah,
and now everybody's focused on this because it's so interesting. And it's like, wow, we they're kind of proving that there is some type of God or whatever. And so I feel like we're all distracted. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really answer your question about the gyroscope, but that's what I want to look into it. I really do. But
right, but what's more important?
Yeah, I'm thinking like, what should I be doing now? Should I be growing food? Because it all goes back to the very first thing I ever learned about was the Federal Reserve System. Like a year after I bought my house, I started a new job, and a guy came up to me. He said, "Have you ever heard about fractional reserve banking?" And he introduced me to Alex Jones and all this other stuff. And then later I said Alex Jones is a shill, and then explained fractional reserve banking to me and told me the Fed was private. And I said, no way. That's no way. I couldn't believe that. And then, sure enough, I tried to prove it wrong. I said, oh my gosh, this is crazy. My whole life growing up, I thought, how do banks make money? They loan all this money out, and then they take such a huge risk, and then no, they don't loan anything out.
I know. I remember asking my dad to explain it to me, and he couldn't even explain it. He's like, well, there's this thing called the mint. And they print our currency, and bada bing, bada boom. Like, what?
Yeah, they don't. They purposely do not teach us this in school. I mean,
of course.
So that's like, I think when it's all said and done, like the biggest problem the world has right now is privately owned currency systems.
Yes.
Like it has enslaved us.
Absolutely.
They make a bond, is what creates the money. Is basically what creates the money, and people buy the bonds, and then we have to pay interest on the bonds, and then they're very clever about it because other countries and other people buy those bonds, so then they've already put real money into those bonds, so we have to pay it back, even though the money was created out of thin air. So if we don't pay it, we kind of screw like China over or whatever other country. So it's so clever. I mean, it pisses me off, but it's like they really knew what they were doing.
And they've done it for thousands of years. I mean, and they've been kicked out of so many different places for doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's now usury on steroids. I mean, because it can be created so quickly electronically, and it's just, and more and more people are starting to realize this, but then there's the people I tell this and like, yeah, whatever. I'm just like, like this, your children are going to be enslaved. Like, I mean, with just debt that isn't real. And so that's kind of where I'm going. Like, this is still our number one problem.
I agree. And also, that's why I don't trust any of these politicians, even Trump, who everyone is in love with. Oh, he's going to kick out the Muslims, and it's going to be great. Yeah. He's going to build a wall. And, like, I doubt he's even going to do that stuff. It would be great. I mean, we need to have our borders secured. But has he talked about ending the Fed? No. No,
yeah, that's the thing I say. Like, people talk to me about politicians. I said, did they mention the Federal Reserve? They said, no, I said, full shit.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a rich dude.
Yeah, he knows how it works.
Why would he want to end the Fed? He's on top.
Yeah, exactly. If you talk about it, you get killed too. So I mean, that's the other thing. So I mean, Ron Paul and Rand Paul talked about auditing it, but no, you need to talk about ending it, not auditing it. I mean, I'm sure if we audited it, we'd be even more angry. But
we'd just be like, oh, so this is how they're enslaving us. Cool, okay.
Yeah.
What does that do? It needs to be completely. I mean, they need to be kicked out. Yep. And I think Iceland did that, right? Didn't they kick out the banks?
Yeah, they did. They held the banks accountable, and that was so awesome. And that was like 4 years ago, I think they first did that. And
I just hope that they don't succumb to this pressure to take in fake refugees.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're all, man, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's bad.
And I definitely think Trump is by design. He's designed to make everyone hate white people more, and that's a problem. I mean, I just hate white Christian Americans, and I'm not a Christian, but I mean that's the majority of us, or majority of people in this country. Right. So,
and Trump is like a polarizing thing. It's really weird because you'll have these. He retweeted something from a white genocide Twitter, so everyone's like, "Whoa, he's on our side!" And
really?
And while I think that's great that he retweeted that because that's getting our message out there, our meme, and it's people are going to say, "White genocide, what's that?" And they're going to Google it, and they might stumble across, Renegade Broadcasting or some of the work that some of the people on this network have done. So in that sense, it's good. But then you'll have a completely contradictory article that says Trump has the most Jewish ties of any GOP candidate, and he supports Israel 1,000%, and obviously has not talked about the Fed. So it's like I don't even know what to think about this, but I do think that he was decided. This was decided a long time ago that Trump would come into the mix.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I've seen a lot of stuff about The Simpsons predicting things, and he was on The Simpsons as becoming president, and they definitely predicted 9/11 and all these other things. It's just mind-blowing to see all this stuff in retrospect.
Yeah, they definitely did predict 9/11. The thing with The Simpsons, I'm still trying to figure out, because I heard one version that, it was the elevator scene, right, where he's going down the elevator, and it's like the exact replica of Are you talking about that one? Or I know they have Trump in a lot of their episodes.
Oh, yeah, no, I saw some YouTube video about, Trump was actually a presidential candidate in the episode.
Yeah,
This was years ago.
So they did predict that.
And then there's a 9/11 one where Bart holds up he's like, tickets to New York for $9, and it has a $9, and then the two towers make the 11. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
This stuff, I mean, it's just scary to me that people are still assuming that it was Muslims with box cutters that flew planes into two buildings. I'm of the mind that there were no planes, that these things were just taken down. I mean, they were just rigged with explosives and taken down. I mean, I don't know if you've seen September Clues, they have a pretty compelling case there for the no planes theory.
Yeah, I went a full circle. I actually, when I first looked into this, I started off trying to prove it wrong. Or somebody sent me a 9/11 in 5 minutes conspiracy video, and I was like, what? And it was an architect that sent it to me, a guy I really respected.
Yeah.
And so I said, what? This is crazy, but it made a lot of good points. It was actually the guy, Corbett Report. He's pretty, I like this station, but he does the 5-minute video, which is pretty funny. And, so I started off trying to prove it wrong, and I started doing calculations and stuff, just like trying to figure out how much energy would have been like transferred into the building. The base shear at the bottom. Just things to try to wrap my head around the forces. And I quickly realized like there's no way that even if these planes hit these buildings that they would have fallen down. But then if you really think about it, an aluminum plane hitting a 500,000 pounds of structural steel at rust, it would have smashed like a tin can.
Exactly.
Like it wouldn't have done that much damage.
Right.
And so, but say it did, like they still would not have fallen down. There's just absolutely no way.
Or Building 7 that wasn't even hit by a plane. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's the smoking gun. But what's actually really interesting is I had an adjunct professor for structural steel in college, and he was a PhD from the Army Corps, and he just, this is the first class he ever taught, and so it was my class. And on the very first day of class, he made us all write a one-page paper on what we thought caused the destruction of the World Trade Center. It was great, and like none of us, like this was back in like 2007, I think. So he didn't, like, all of us went and found the official story and just regurgitated,
right,
and like brought in our papers the next day or the next week to class, whenever it was. And he goes, "That's what you guys think?" And I said, and everyone was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay." And he just taught the class, like never said anything.
Wow.
And then I found out the very next spring he taught the class again, and he told the class that he didn't believe the story.
Oh, that's
but
great.
I didn't know about this until I started looking into it in 2012, and like it hit me like, oh my gosh, he was trying to wake us up. And then so then I still looked into it, and then I found Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I don't know, have you seen them?
Yes.
Well, I got really into their work, and I actually signed their petition. I mean, you can find my name on there if you want to look. If anybody listening wants to see if I'm on there, I had to send them my college transcripts. I had to give them my license information, my professional engineering license, all that information to get on the petition. So I'm like, wow, this is pretty legit.
Yeah.
But then, when at the final stage, when I was figuring out, I mean, I am on the petition. I left my name on there, but they started asking me some questions, and they said. One of the questions was, have you looked into any alternate theories besides thermite, like any of the nuclear theories or any of the directed energy weapons or any of this stuff? And they're like, because they're telling me you can't look into anything else but our theory. I'm like, that's not science. That's not science. That's we have to be open. Yeah, we have to be open to all hypotheses.
Yes.
And then I realized, like, it's controlled opposition. It sucks. It really is.
Yep.
And I mean, there's 2,300 architects and engineers, and I'm sure they're all licensed, like it says. But the thermite theory really doesn't hold up because you would need so much thermite to do that.
Yep.
And so then I found out about that. Have you ever looked into Dr. Judy Wood's work?
I have.
Yeah, hers makes, like, just pure, like, being in engineering school and sitting through presentations, that's exactly what you would sit through for anything. Like, what she does with her PowerPoint presentation at the Breakthrough Energy Conference is just, it's mind-blowing. Like, she's showing things, they're like, yeah, this building is just disintegrating. Like, these beams and columns are literally turning to dust in the air. Like, you can see it happening. There's no way thermite did that. I don't know what did that. And so my theory on this is they took the building, the two towers out with something we've never seen before, and then they blew Building 7 up to cover that up because they knew that we would get that people would catch on to this. So Building 7 was actually taken down with explosives, but the other two buildings were destroyed with something completely different. So
interesting.
That sounds crazy. I mean, it sounds like This is a huge.
Probably not for any of my listeners. I'm crazy, so.
But I mean, it sounds that way. But when
Right.
you really look into it, I've showed other structural engineers this, and they've watched our videos and they're like, holy, this makes a lot of sense. So I mean, we're bouncing around here, like, but
oh no, that's cool.
But yeah, that was huge for me, and that also made me realize that there is controlled opposition, and that's when I started to realize how much controlled opposition is out there.
Oh my God, it's crazy. I was so naive. I got roped into the whole 9/11 We Are Change thing, the communist group, basically, when I was living in New York City, because I had found out that what I thought was the truth about 9/11. So it was Loose Change, again, I'm sure you've seen it, a controlled opposition film, where they'll tell you, I think they still... No, they basically try and say that it was like George Bush and it was an inside job. And yeah, technically it was an inside job, but it was also an outside job, an Israeli job.
Yeah.
We are one and the same now. I mean, we are a Zionist-occupied government. But they made it just kind of seem like it was George Bush and the buck stops there and it has nothing to do with Israel.
Yeah, I know that's a big one for me, because I can't get around the 5 dancing Israelis. I'm sure you've seen that video.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And then also Larry Silverstein buying the. I mean, it was a publicly owned compound until 6 months before 9/11. That's insane.
Yeah.
Somebody bought it, and then of course Marvin Bush was in charge of security for the whole thing. Like it's crazy how interconnected this whole thing is.
It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And also, you would have to have complete media control to pull this event off, because it's my opinion that all of this footage was created before the actual event. So we were watching, most people were not seeing this happen in real life. They were watching it on TV. So you have to have basically CNN, all these news stations, in cahoots, which how can you do that unless you own everything and own the media?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and also there was, who was it? There was another researcher who, maybe it's Judy, I don't know, but she had a theory that, she actually had footage or pictures of these supposed Israeli art students that were basically like rigging explosives in the building.
Oh wow! Yeah,
there's art.
Oh wow! No, I hadn't seen that. I mean, I'm not saying that Judy Wood is completely right either.
I don't know if this lady's right either. There's so many different theories, but the nuclear one doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Because now I've been learning that nukes might not be exactly what we're told they are, but some people will say, oh, well, they, all the people in the financial district of Manhattan, came down with radiation type diseases, but that could be from just asbestos, from all the crap that was in that building, that, this dust that spread everywhere.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards that nukes don't exist at all. Yeah. I don't think they do.
Yeah.
And, people say, oh, that's crazy. What about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Well,
it was bombs.
The Japanese leaders saw what happened to Mussolini, and so they know they're going to lose. There's no way they're going to win now. The rest of the world's going to gang up on them. So why not make a deal? So the world sees this super weapon that keeps us terrified of and submitting for 60 years. And my whole thing is, I'm tired of playing poker. Let's see it. Let's see a nuke.
Show me it.
Yeah, no. I mean, they've tested 2,000 nukes underground. Like, we've never felt a rumble from it. I don't think.
Give me a freaking break. It's such a joke. And also, like, some of these, some of the footage from, I don't know, was it the A bomb, or I don't know, maybe it was.
Oh yeah.
It's like, okay, so you're telling me that it destroys everything in sight except for the camera. Like, the camera just stays there and it's totally fine.
Yes. Yeah. That's yeah. It doesn't even shake. And then I love, my favorite one is the two guys in the window with their glasses on, like the sunglasses on or whatever, like the old people sunglasses, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like blind people sunglasses.
The light hits the wall in the window, and the camera's outside looking in on them, like, and it doesn't even move. Like, what? Yeah, it's so silly.
Ridiculous.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say it's ridiculous, and I was gonna say that, have you heard of the Samson option?
No.
Okay, so basically it's like Israel's threat that if they don't like what anyone's doing, I think it's actually targeted at Europe. I don't know, I need to get more clear on this. But basically, the gist of it is that they're going to nuke whoever doesn't like them. The Samson option. Yeah. So that, of course, will keep people in fear, like, oh my God, I don't want big bad Israel to nuke us. But what if it was not even an option? What if they were bluffing?
No. It's all a bluff. I think it's all a bluff. Yeah. I mean, some serious poker playing. This is all been.
Psychological warfare.
Yep. I ask these questions, like, why is Israel allowed to have nukes and Iran isn't? Iran hasn't attacked anybody in 200 years.
Right.
Why? This is crazy. And then, what's going on with Palestine? I mean, then people will argue and say it's not as bad as we think. Or
no, it is.
I know people, and I met people in college, and I know people that have been in the Middle East, lived there. Like it's not.
I mean,
I
see these videos all the time of these IDF soldiers like terrorizing children, killing children, shooting them, running them over with cars, and like the thousands and thousands and thousands of Palestinians that have been slaughtered. When's the last time you heard about a bunch of Israelis dying? And have you heard of their Iron Dome?
Yeah, I have.
That's a fucking joke, too. That's bluffing, too. I mean, they basically will just shoot pyrotechnics up into the sky and be like, oh my god, they saved us, the Iron Dome. Like the Palestinians actually have the technology to be able to send over a rocket to Israel. They're like throwing rocks at Israel.
Yes,
they're in an open-air prison. Do they even have a military?
No, they're not allowed to have guns. I mean, it's crazy.
They're just being exterminated.
I know. And then, what's crazy is I grew up in a conservative household, and I was a brainwashed conservative in my into my young 20s, and I started realizing that war is ridiculous, and I started waking up to things, and I started really looking into things and realizing asking questions, and realizing that just for asking questions, people say that's anti-Semitic. I'm like, no, it's a valid question here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's. Something's very wrong if I can't ask questions like this, why is the Federal Reserve, why do so many dual U.S. Israeli citizens control the Federal Reserve System? Why are we giving them $3 billion a month?
Mm-hmm.
Why was Israel created after World War II? Why were the Palestinians kicked off of their land? They had nothing to do with any of this. This is insane. And there's arguments about whose land it was, whatever. But why can't we ask these questions? It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought we were free. I thought we were number one.
Yeah.
Sure, number one. No, we're not. We might be number one for obesity.
Yeah, I know. That's another thing.
But as far as freedom, no, definitely not. Well, I know we're kind of coming to a close here, and thanks for taking the time to chat with me today. But I was wondering if in closing you could maybe tell the listeners a little bit about some of the videos or just observations you've been doing of different planets through your telescope and some of the weird anomalies that you've witnessed.
Oh, yeah. The weirdest thing for me that I've noticed is I've still been learning. I'm a newbie. I'm a total newbie when it comes to looking at stars and stuff. And so I've taken stuff out of focus and in focus and just been putting things up on my channel and getting feedback from people. But the weirdest thing I notice is if the moon's out, I can start with the moon and I'll focus my telescope on the moon, and I'll get it focused, get it into focus so you can see all the craters. It looks crazy. And then I move it around and I look at a star, and that star's in focus. And then I look at another star, that star's in focus. I never have to adjust the focus again to get a clear picture. And so, when you look at something on Earth with a telescope or binoculars, if something's closer or farther away, you have to adjust your focus to get a clear picture of it. But when you're looking at these objects in the sky, nope, everything you just set the focus on the moon, and everything appears to be the same. At least that's what I've noticed. And then looking at things like Jupiter, these stars that are trailing it and in front of it and behind it that are supposed to be moons, they really just look like lights.
Yeah.
And so you start looking at this stuff, and you really go out there and start looking at it. It doesn't really look like what we've been told it is, what's been ingrained in your mind. And I'm still an amateur at this, and there's another guy on Facebook that's getting some really good footage out there, and he's finding the same things. And actually, more and more people are starting to film this stuff, and you just start to notice that you're not. I don't really think we're looking at what we've been told we've been looking at.
No.
So yeah, I encourage anybody to go out there. Please start looking at the sky. Start watching the star trails. If you're into photography, set your shutter, leave your shutter open for 12 hours so you can see the star trails. Focus it on Polaris. Watch the stars make perfect circles around Polaris. Start asking yourself, is this really what we've been told? Does this make sense that where all this movement's happening in the solar system, and we're only seeing these stars do certain things? It just doesn't. It's not adding up.
No, it's definitely not. And something that I'm still trying to figure out is what causes the phases of the moon. Is it creating its own light? Is it reflecting light? I mean, it doesn't seem that it's reflecting light because it's transparent in the beginning until it gets like darker. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's making its own light. I definitely do. When you look at it enough, I'm starting to think that the phases of the moon are really just the lights turning on and off, because it looks like it has lights. It's multiple lights, but I mean that's just a guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's Earth's shadow, because how can it be Earth's shadow when you can see the sun? And I mean, clearly the sun and the moon are in the sky at the same time. That happens really often, and it looks like it's only lighting up one, or that the sun's only lighting up one side, but it's also transparent. And I don't know, but that goes back to the Truman Show. Is it designed to deceive us like that? I don't know.
Right. So, there's something weird up there, and I need to figure it out. I don't know if I ever will, but I'll try. And just in closing, with lunar eclipses, have you heard this theory of Rahu, the black sun, which is supposedly a third celestial body that basically, goes directly in front of the sun or that would be a solar eclipse. So then goes directly in front of the moon. Do you know anything about this?
I have heard that. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I mean, based on the illusion that this world seems to be, I'm up for anything. What could be up there? There could be things that we can't see and can choose to be seen or not be seen.
Right. The eclipses don't make sense to me still.
Yeah, I don't get that either. I mean, the explanation on the heliocentric model actually made sense for a while, but then I started thinking, no, it doesn't really explain all of it. So, is Rahu? I think Rahu actually comes from the Vedas, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems to come from a few different. Now, Rahu, that name I think is from the Vedas, and also some like East Asian traditions as well. I'm kind of slowly piecing together an article on this because this black sun thing, it's within all cultures, and you especially have like the black sun. I don't know if you've seen it. It's often associated with like Nazis and that kind of thing. But I've heard this black sun mentioned in a bunch of different cultures and traditions, ancient traditions. So I don't know. There could be something there. It's awfully fascinating to think about.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much the Nazis actually knew, because since I've been studying a lot of Indian religions, the Jains, the Jainism, they have the swastika. That's like one of their main symbols, and it's very interesting what that symbol really represents.
Oh, I think that they were really looking into some things that we would be fascinated learning about, but it's really, a lot of it's been buried. But I think that they were really ahead of their time, because they were free from the parasites. They really could then go to explore the stars. And I don't necessarily think that they went, and like landed on the moon or something. But, they were able to start to try and, make sense of the world around them because they finally had these parasites off their back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like we've lost a lot of information. I mean, like we've always heard, history is written by the winners, and I think that statement alone has been, people have been enlightened enough, for lack of a better term, to that statement enough in our society that we should be saying, hey, wait a second, we right now, as far as we know, are the current winners. We have the world reserve currency because of World War II. Like, if we know the winners write the history, and we know that the winners are never going to say the bad things about themselves, maybe we should look into our own history and see if something's not right here, because that always seems to happen with every society. Let's be the better person, the better group society.
Right, let's learn from history.
Yeah, and say we're not perfect, because there's no perfect society. Let's actually question this and see where our flaws are, and see if we can stop another society from just falling, and then some other imperialistic society from starting up again. So, who knows what will happen with one world government, and maybe we can stop that.
Yeah, things are certainly getting pretty insane all over this world, whatever shape it might be.